Well, it is official. The Israeli parliament has reopened for its summer session. And while most of the country's focus is on whether or not the coalition is actually going to follow through with legislation to overhaul the judicial system and increase government power, there's actually a more pressing matter on the table that many would say, and that's passing the 2023 state budget. The government now has 4 weeks to clear a 2-year trillion shekel budget through the parliament. And if a deal is not reached by May 29th, the end of this month, Israelis could be looking at another round of snap elections because the parliament would automatically dissolve. So what is this budget going to include, and why has it become or taken so long to pass? Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu's party made generous promises to secure the support of his ultra-Orthodox and far-right coalition parties, which included lots of funding for Haredi education and religious initiatives, improving conditions for West Bank settlers as well. But these seem to come at the expense of actually addressing the sky-high cost of living in Israel, which happens to affect every single Israeli. And joining us now to break it down is our economic analyst, Ariel Margalit. So first of all, why has it taken so long for a budget to be passed? Is this normal? And what are kind of the biggest points of contention, if any?
According to Israeli law, a new government in Israel has 6 months to pass a budget. Otherwise, it goes to elections. It's normative that it takes a few months. In the first plenum of the Knesset, the winter plenum, as you said, the government was mostly preoccupied and occupied with passing the judicial overhaul. Once they saw that this was not going as easily as they thought, they just basically gave the previous budget an extension, the 23-24 budget an extension, and now this brings us to our first day of the summer plenum. As you mentioned today, 29 days left for this government to pass the budget. There are huge differences there. Of course, the ultra-Orthodox parties, as you mentioned, are asking for more funds for the ultra-Orthodox education. There is also the cost of reducing the recruitment age, the exemption from recruitment age for Haredi students and yeshiva students, and they're from the army, and of course budgets for construction of more units in settlements, more roads, more infrastructure in settlements, etc. But also other issues like, of course, education and healthcare, etc. At the current state of things, we can't imagine that this government would want to go for elections. Current polls indicate that this government is down from 64 seats to 52. So not a good time for them to go. So they're going to want to pass this budget because they don't want to risk having to be dissolved.
But, you know, we know that all of the parties in this coalition campaigned on reducing the cost of living. That is what Israelis care the most about right now, is being able to afford daily life. So what is this proposed budget actually going to do to bring down that cost of living? Because we are hearing that, you know, dairy prices, for example, are set to rise enormously, and that is certainly not the only product.
Yeah, very little. And this is the main criticism towards this government, that it is going to bring prices down for certain segments of the population, mostly for the ultra-Orthodox and for settler groups that are going to be exempted from more taxes, etc. But with regards to the general population in Israel, we're only hearing of more increase in prices. Let's take a look, for example, at the dairy industry. There's going to be an increase of 16%. Smotrich, Minister of Finance, has agreed with the dairy industry that this will be gradual. So first 9% and then a gradual increase in the next few years. For example, just at the end of the month, 1 liter carton of 3% milk will rise from $172 to $187. That's one example. And we can see another example for soft white cheese, again an increase there. Now we do have to remember that in 2011 Israelis went to the street. It was called the cottage protest, the mass protest in Israel in 2011, where Israelis basically said the Tnuva cottage cheese here in Israel costs more than it does the same cheese by Tnuva in the UK or in Germany. How is that possible? This is still the case.
Right. Okay, so let's also talk about the burden on kids when it comes to daycare, because we know that Netanyahu, he really promised to ease that burden by subsidizing daycare for babies and infants aged 0 to 3. Where does that stand?
Yeah, so there was a program that was just announced by Minister of Finance, Minister of Education, and Netanyahu himself, and we can take a look at some of the data that they put forward. So they are trying to take some steps that will help, especially those from lower socioeconomic segments in society. A tax benefit worth $260 per month to parents who are both employed per child aged 0 to 3 starting January 1st, 2024. A word about that, $290 per month is the minimum that parents pay for state-regulated daycares for infants. For state-regulated.
Right.
Those are not necessarily the ones that you want to send your children to if you have opportunity or financial possibility to do otherwise, but it is the case for many parents. And there are going to be other subsidies, $470 per month starting in September 2023. We're going to have to see if all these actually come into effect. There's also going to be $550 million US dollars that are going to be committed to increasing the number of state-regulated daycares in Israel. There is a huge shortage in daycares, and hopefully that will also help solve the problem. Again, we have to see if this government survives for long enough in order to actually materialize all these promises.